Hello and welcome to Week in Review with me, Jayne Secker. Kevin Maguire and Andrew Secker are here to look back through the biggest stories of the past 7 days. Before we get started, let's get a taste of what the week was all about. Could austerity be over? Far-left Syriza won power in Greece, promising an ease to the financial squeeze in the country. George Osborne insisted the UK's economic recovery is on track. GDP growth slowed to 0.5% in the final quarter of last year. But with less than 100 days to go, the party leaders embarked on a war of words ahead of the general election as polls forecast a hung parliament. The Reverend Libby Lane became the Church of England's first female bishop, against the vocal opposition of some.
No, not in the Bible.
Apple recorded the biggest quarterly profits for a public company ever, making $18 billion in 3 months. Vladimir Putin was called a common criminal dressed as a head of state by the widow of Alexander Litvinenko as an inquiry began into his death. New York shut down for Snowmageddon in the end, though it was more of a light dusting than a whiteout. A TV station in the Netherlands went off air after a man armed with a fake gun entered the building and demanded to be put on air. And world leaders joined Holocaust survivors, marking 70 years since Soviet troops liberated the Auschwitz death camp. I don't know if you saw much of the coverage of Auschwitz, but extraordinary moving footage of people returning, a lot of them for the first time and probably the last time.
No, absolutely. You watch those survivors and it is one of the great crime scenes of history. And you watch them and you cannot imagine what they endured at the time. But you also, in the back of your mind, is the knowledge that 10 years' time, the ranks will be thinner. So it's, we should honour them now, never forget.
They showed great courage, didn't they, in returning a lot of them?
They did, and if you haven't been to Auschwitz, it should almost be part of your education. School children should be made to go and see just how terrible it really was.
Indeed. Well, let's move on to the stories throughout the week. And the first story that you've picked out for us is the rise of the far left in Greece. And after years of spending cuts imposed as part of the country's financial bailout from the EU, the Syriza party, campaigning on a promise to end austerity, has taken power. Our Europe correspondent Robert Nisbet reports.
It's an event heavy with symbolism, the moment a new leader is given the mandate by the Greek president. But Alexis Tsipras, again eschewing a tie, is not a man given to formality. His message here, I'm in a hurry to govern, let's get on with it. When it came to the oath, there was another telling change to convention. The atheist asked the Orthodox Church to stay out of the ceremony. His oath was civil and to the point.
Mr. President, I assure you upon my honour that I will observe the Constitution and the laws and serve the general interest of the Greek nation.
Voters in Monastiraki hope the new government will make their day-to-day lives a little easier.
They want to have their life calm. They want to go out, have coffee, have a chat, have a job.
There's an enormous weight of expectation now on Mr. Tsipras to improve the lot of his citizens and secure less onerous conditions attached to the loans keeping Greece afloat. For this young leader, overturning a 40-year stranglehold on Greek politics by the centre-left and centre-right may have been the easy part.
So is it austerity that's failed, or is it the Eurozone?
The Eurozone is a disaster. And Greece should never have been in the single currency because the economy isn't strong enough or big enough. They cooked the books, and the Germans and the French went along with it because of this vainglorious project of having 19 countries in this ludicrous straitjacket. And I think I suspect that the Syriza project will fail too, because I do not think that man will be able to deliver what Greeks want, which is not to pay their debts. Why shouldn't they pay their debts? They ran them up. Why shouldn't they pay them?
They made these promises to the EU. Why shouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. But they're not calling for it to be cancelled. They're calling for them to be rescheduled so you can grow the economy. I think if I lived in Greece, I'd have probably voted. Of
course you would.
Syriza to end austerity. If you had the economic misery they're enduring in Britain, it'd be 8 million people unemployed. Now, in the euro, there is a structural problem with the euro that you can't, when your economy goes into trouble, you can't devalue your currency. In the old days, they would have devalued the drachma. If you're not going to do that, you've got to have big fiscal transfers around the area. You'd have to put money into Greece, but you don't put it in and then impose austerity, which is putting people out of work. You're not going to grow an economy by putting people out of work or making them poorer. You want them to be in work and paying, and he recognises that. Now, look, you might get a cheaper gin and tonic next time you go, so you'll probably be happy. But I think they give people around Europe hope by challenging austerity.
Do you think it
and
could
a failed
lead to a
economics.
rise in the left here in the UK, looking at it for inspiration?
No, I think absolutely the reverse will happen. And I think it's amazing when people like Kevin Maguire talk about structural problems. The structural problem with the euro is it doesn't work. It is a doomed, foolish, vainglorious project that doesn't work. You cannot have a Greek economy operating on the same level as the German economy. It's like a Rolls-Royce and a cart horse. And he's supporting the cart horse.
It probably works rather well for Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany.
And the left will not flourish here. I think actually people will see the problems in Greece and think, phew, what a relief. It's not
I
us.
quite like is to return all the loot that their oligarchs have funneled to London.
Don't get us on to the marbles now. Let's move on to our gaffe of the week. And first up, it's Benedict Cumberbatch. It's been described as a slip of the tongue. He's played lots of characters from a different era, but it seems that his vocabulary might be decades out of date too. He has apologised after saying he was devastated to have caused offence after using the word coloured on a US TV show to describe black actors. I mean, what do you think about this row?
I'm sorry he feels devastated, because I think he's a great guy, he's a good actor, and he meant no racial offence whatsoever when he used the word coloured. It's not a word I would use. I would call somebody black. But there was no intent to cause offence, and I think it's a storm in a teacup. And in America, of course, people are more colour sensitive, not least this year, because there are no black actors nominated for an Oscar.
But that's the point, isn't it? What he was saying. He was actually defending black actors and saying that there isn't the diversity in casting.
Particularly in Britain, and that was the irony. Yeah. He was trying to be helpful and progressive. And I agree. I think it's the intent in language that always counts. He apologised. He's actually inadvertently raised an issue. I don't think that many people criticised him, but certainly coloured is a very derogatory term. But you often hear it in Britain by an older generation who don't mix with people who are black, Asian, or from other ethnic minorities. Yeah.
Do you think it'll really damage his?
No. I hope not.
For the Oscar?
I hope not. But someone did say to me, I did hear some American commentator on the radio saying, that's his hope of an Oscar gone. That would be terrible if that was the case.
Yeah. OK, let's move to our second gaffe of the week, and this time it's Boris Johnson. The London mayor says the terrorists are tortured men who are rejected by women and in desperate need of self-esteem, and he went a little further using rather colourful language, describing them in graphic terms, essentially enjoying their own company whilst watching porn.
I think self-abusers who may go blind is what he was getting at. Or he might have meant bankers, actually. But nevertheless...
It rhymes with that.
Look, to be a jihadi, you've got to be a weird and a fanatical, and you've lost your way somehow. But I think the way he often just veers off into this colourful language, I think it often shows a kind of, it's populist appeal, but it does show a lack of judgment too, given that he wants to be the Tory leader and Prime Minister.
I don't see there's a gaffe at all.
Sweeping statement.
Well, I think he can be as abusive about jihadis as he likes, and good luck to him. They're terrible people, they're misguided, and he can call them that. If it does rhyme with bankers, I completely agree with him. It's the least of the things I would call them.
That may be the case. How does it help, though? It's not much of an analysis, is it?
Should we cosset them and be nice to them?
No, it's not much of an analysis.
More, please, Boris, not less.
Try and work out how they end up the way they do.
You know he's onto something good if he's disagreeing.
Stop them becoming terrorists.
OK. Now, the election countdown is, of course, continuing, and this week marked 100 days to go, and the party leaders have certainly set out their stalls for the campaigns. Our political editor, Faisal Islam, has more.
100 days to make their case, get a mandate, and perhaps change a nation's fate. The Prime Minister invited Sky News into the Cabinet room today. His message, as the Eurozone crisis resurfaces, don't risk Labour.
I'm worried about the future of our country if we end up with an unstable left-wing government that starts to borrow and spend and wreck the economic progress that we've made. Of course I worry about that, but we have 100 days to go to make this argument.
Ed Miliband campaigning today not on the economy but saving the NHS with a 10-year plan.
Our country's most precious institution faces, I believe, its most perilous moment in a generation. And it is a choice of two futures. Carrying on with a Conservative plan, which has already led to an NHS in crisis and threatens the service as we know it. Or a Labour plan.
In the Lib Dem stronghold of Bermondsey, Nick Clegg out campaigning.
We need to fight and fight very hard in every street, on every doorstep, to get our message across that we want to build both a stronger economy and a fairer society. And I think we're the only party that now offers that balance.
So with all the major parties facing a squeeze, even the Deputy PM mucking in, it's all hands on deck.
Have you got a stomach for the next 100 days? Are you both feeling ready for the fight?
Well, you know what I'm ready for is the TV debates, which the Prime Minister keeps chickening out. If David Cameron's record was half as good as he pretended, he would be going up against his rivals. Instead, he's chickening out because he's got a record he can't defend. What? Economic growth slowing. He's put up taxes, $13.5 billion. He hasn't cut them. Deficit, he's missed all his targets. This week you saw an NHS crisis. He's mucked up the exam system. The gap's getting bigger. Come on, you know, I know you're not going to come out with the central office propaganda. Come on, you can bring it all. But you know, if he had a good record, he'd be out there accepting those debates. In terms of the first week of campaigning, what a complete disaster, Fred Miliband, who goes on the NHS and is disowned by not one former Labour Health Secretary, two, John Hutton and Alan Milburn, both completely disowned. Then you get Alan Johnson, who was also Health Secretary, saying, I'm not sure about this strategy. So 3 Labour Health Secretaries have all completely disowned Labour's NHS strategy.
Are the Conservatives right to focus on the economy and are Labour right to focus on the NHS?
I think you've got to do them both. But the NHS is Labour's stronger hand, the economy,
not this week.
The Tories were leading in the polls. But Alan Milburn, you normally slag him off, the former Labour Health Secretary, and let's face it, he's making a killing, an absolute killing out of private medical care, taking NHS contracts. That should have been declared when he did it. Alan Milburn has got a vested self-interest.
Yeah. Well, anyway, whatever Kevin says, 2 very senior former Labour Health Secretaries have completely repudiated Labour's entire campaign strategy. What a good start.
It's not being reflected in this room, obviously, but Nigel Farage has said that this is going to be the nastiest election, he thinks, in a long time, that they've got these big election strategists come across from the States, and it's really going to become quite personal. Do you think it will?
The Tories did that rather disgraceful Sinn Féin poster when they approached Sinn Féin to see if they'd be taking the seats, as did the Lib Dems, as did the SNP, as did Labour, because you're doing your calculations. But every election campaign has always said it's going to be the nastiest. I'm very, very doubtful. 92 was particularly nasty.
The poster of Ed Miliband, the Labour Party said, oh, it's disgraceful, they've tampered with the picture of Ed Miliband. They hadn't.
Yes, they
had. He really did look like that. No, he really does look that weird.
They admitted they've admitted tampering with pictures of Ed Miliband.
Right.
You're wrong again.
A quiz for you guys now. What links these 4 things? We've got Nutella, Robocop, Osama bin Laden, and Tom Cruise. They're thinking. Find out after the break. Welcome back to Week in Review with me, Jayne Secker, Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Andrew Pearce, Consultant Editor of the Daily Mail. Join me. Before the break, we asked what links these items. You had a good guess.
I wondered if they've all been accepted into North Korea in some way, in videos or whatever. Or you've probably name-dropped a lot, haven't you?
It is to do with names. They didn't get them. These are all baby names that have been banned around the world. A judge in France this week told a couple that they couldn't call their child Nutella because it's the trade name of a spread. We've also we've got a list of other names that have been banned. You'll be glad we've chosen the pictures that we did. Lucifer was banned in New Zealand.
Gosh.
Anus was banned in Denmark. Osama bin Laden was banned as a name in Turkey. Tom banned in Portugal because it's a nickname and you have to use a full name.
A midwife in South Wales.
Robocop and Scrotum were also banned in Mexico.
Who would want to call their child Scrotum?
Somebody clearly did, didn't they?
I know you get called that, but I have to tell people when they shout that at you, it's not your real name. I know a midwife in South Wales said she had a patient who wanted to call her daughter Chlamydia.
Lovely.
Nice.
It's not a flower.
No.
Right, let's move on to the row over the death penalty. A bit of a handbrake turn in Oklahoma in the United States. Last year there was an outcry when problems administering a lethal cocktail led to a prisoner writhing in pain for 43 minutes before he died of a heart attack. Well, it's raised further questions about capital punishment in the country. Ian Woods has more.
Relatives and friends of a condemned man come to say what could be their final goodbyes.
Here's the deal.
He's due to be executed the following day, and as they gather, there's still no word of a reprieve.
So we may be doing some...
I spent 17 years of my life in there, and I hope and pray that they don't execute me for something I didn't do.
Shortly afterwards, Richard Glossop got his stay of execution. It may buy him a few more months, but his life is unlikely to be spared, even though he didn't kill anyone. He was accused of paying an accomplice to murder the owner of a motel where they worked. The actual killer was offered a plea deal, and he escaped the death penalty in return for testifying against Glossop. Oklahoma has been under the international spotlight ever since the botched execution of convicted killer Clayton Lockett last year. The prison warden called it a bloody mess. Problems administering the lethal injection meant that Lockett was left writhing in pain for 43 minutes before finally dying of a heart attack. Even though a new death chamber has been built inside this prison, there's still a fierce debate about the effectiveness of one of the drugs used in the lethal injection cocktail. But the death penalty retains public support in the state, and some lawmakers aren't too fussed at how it's done.
And if it got to a point where we didn't have the technological advancements to have lethal injections, then I would support hanging or beheading or whatever it would take to make sure that that person, in the end, meets his justice.
I mean, what do you think about the fact that America goes out there on the world stage, it criticises countries where they flog and they behead people, but it still puts members of its own society to death?
You despair, don't you? It's the leader of the free world, and the death penalty is barbaric and horrible, and it's an anachronism, but it's the law in that country, so I suppose they should just get on and do it.
And there are still people in this country who call for it to be brought back when we see horrific crimes. Every time somebody is in prison for murdering a child, there are calls.
I understand that impulse. If it's your child, somebody you know, you understand that, but you've got to have a law that protects us all. And I'm reminded, really, of that Gandhi saying about when he was asked, what do you think about Western civilization? He said it would be a good thing. I mean, it is utterly barbaric, and America is one of the worst culprits here.
Right, let's move on to your paper stories of the week. Kevin, you first, and this is an unwelcome cold caller who got through to David Cameron. He wasn't trying to sell life insurance or PPI. He was apparently off his face on booze and cocaine at 11 o'clock in the morning.
That's right. So that
could have
been some cabinet ministers in earlier careers, actually, if we believe what we're told. But it kind of... I mean, it's embarrassing, I think, rather than a major security breach. But I do wonder how often it happened before, because he seems so relaxed about it, Cameron. And we live in a society which is relatively open, and that is a good thing. You ring up the number 10 switchboard and you claim to be somebody. What they're supposed to do? Ring you back every time? What happens in an emergency then? You're going to waste time.
You'd have thought, because he was posing as the head of GCHQ, you would have thought GCHQ, being the spy centre, would have an elaborate series of code words and... But clearly not.
But they gave out Richard Hannigan's mobile number to the same hoaxer.
Extraordinary.
I think the key bit is you would have thought.
You would have thought. I like the fact that this guy got through, and then when David Cameron asked him what he wanted, he said, "Oh, it's a hoax call." He didn't really have anything to say.
Not very good.
Oh, if you're going to hoax the Prime Minister, at least have a good tale to tell at the end of it.
He was so bad, he should be recruited by MI5 or MI6, given their track record.
A Canadian disc jockey got through to the Queen pretending he was the Canadian Prime Minister, and she fell for it completely. It was fantastic.
Do you still go into the Daily Mail pretending to be a journalist? Oh, no.
On to your next story, Andrew. And you've chosen a story about immigration, and these are comments that the Prime Minister made this week.
This is purely to wind up, Kevin.
Il ne regrette rien.
Yeah, well, this will be part of the election campaign, and why shouldn't it? Because immigration is a huge problem. It's such a huge problem that the leader of the opposition, Ed Miliband, let's not forgot to mention it in his conference speech last year.
He's a son of migrants.
And Cameron is making the point that actually it would be better if there were fewer, because there'd be more jobs for British people, there'd be better social cohesion, because there are problems with multiculturalism, the failure to integrate properly in communities.
But has he succeeded in getting those numbers down, though?
No, he hasn't.
Let's hope he can. Let's hope he can. Let's cut it massively.
Come on, he put it in his last manifesto. He said he'd get it down to tens of thousands, under 100,000.
I'd like it to go lower than that.
263,000 a year now. Far too high. Higher than he inherited from Labour.
Far too high.
A complete record of failure, which you left out until Jayne came up.
Far too high.
One of your rants.
Far too high. Let's get immigration down.
People who've come to Britain...
Labour will increase it.
People who've come to Britain work hard, they pay more in taxes than they take out in services.
163,000 from the EU are on job seekers allowance.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Let's move on to some other kind of...
It's been reported.
Reported where?
Yeah. It's an official statistic. It is.
It's not that figure. It's about 40,000.
No.
And some of those are in between jobs.
Wrong.
Figures of a different kind. Apple, the company's mega profits have pipped all others in history. They made $18 billion last quarter. It's astonishing numbers, aren't they?
Yeah, 12 billion pounds, mainly from sales of the iPhone. It's fantastically successful. Yeah. I use its computers and the phone myself. But I wish they just didn't put so much effort into dodging taxes. That is my beef with his sort of vampire squid. that if it makes money in Britain, it should pay taxes in Britain. And it's rather like Google, great service, they should pay their taxes. Starbucks should pay their taxes. They started. Amazon should pay their taxes. And yeah, you can applaud Apple in so many ways, but not the tax dodging.
I mean, it has become, the products do something in a way that a lot of other technology doesn't. It connects, it's intuitive, and we have more of a relationship, it seems, with Apple products than with any other technology.
I worship my Apple Mac computer at home, and it's not allowed to move. It's in the Thatcher shrine, actually.
You can do them both.
She looks down approvingly because she would approve of a great company.
Is it in a gilt frame?
Exactly. She would approve, of course, of a great commercial success at Apple. But they are fantastic computers, and the iPhones are a phenomenon too. Who bothers with a BlackBerry now? They were the rage once, and they're completely...
Well,
they're past it.
Remember, Microsoft ruled the world. IBM ruled the world. Apple could go, but they survived the loss of Steve Jobs incredibly well.
Yeah. Right, so on to your people or things of the week. And Kevin, we're starting with you, and you've chosen Kim Sears. She's going up this week. Why?
She is.
Prim Kim.
But, you know, there we are. Andy Murray's wife-to-be, watching him playing tennis, and she used some, you know, pretty forceful industrial language. But I like the passion, and you know, she wasn't shouting it out. You had to get lip readers looking at film to actually get it. And I know you don't like her hubby, and so you probably don't like her. But good for her. We wouldn't have batted an eyelid if it was a bloke.
I think, fair play to her. I still can't stand Andy Murray, but good luck to her.
I feel sorry for her. I feel, you know, she goes along to support him, and to have people lip reading.
Well, Roger Federer's wife got into the same trouble last year. Do you remember? During the Davis Cup or some contest, she too used rather earthy language.
She's got very good teeth,
Colourful.
I'm just noticing them.
Lovely teeth, glossy hair.
I don't suppose they're hers.
She'll have an apple a day.
So you're sending her up. You like the cut of her jib and the colour of her language. But who are you sending down?
We're sending subtitlers on TV because Ofcom have said it so often get it wrong. Instead of said giving to our toddlers, it says give to Ayatollahs. Now, I know some toddlers can be Ayatollahs and come troll a house, but you know, I think they have to clean it up when you're on.
I mean, this is for live subtitling programmes a bit like this, I suppose. But for pre-recorded films and things, it's a lot easier to do it in advance. But it is apparently a problem with the voice recognition software. Goodness knows, you know, if you're watching us with subtitles, I do apologise.
Yes, particularly for him.
Yeah, so we're sending that down. Who are you sending up, Andrew? Your first one up, Bart the cat.
This fabulous. I'm a great cat lover. Only last night I was doing a fundraiser for the Cat Protection Organisation, raised thousands of pounds.
You really surprise me sometimes, Andrew.
And there was, I got Lord Ashcroft to write a very large cheque. Got to it. This little cat was buried. The owner thought he died because he was in a car crash. The owner got a neighbour or friend to bury the cat. The cat actually hadn't died at all, and like Lazarus came back from the dead. 5 days later, came back. Bit of a state, but good on him.
Well done, Bart the cat. Yeah, he could do the trip to the vets. But going down, a bit older, he didn't survive. Dippy the dinosaur.
This is Dippy the dinosaur in the British Museum. He's been there since 1979, being moved to a different part of the museum. The word is the staff call that dinosaur Ed Miliband.
Oh, you've been practising that all week.
Yeah,
I tweeted it.
Says Piersaurus. Yeah.
All right, so let's send him down. There we go. Thank you for joining us for our review of the week. Don't forget that you can catch Kevin and Andrew in action on the Sky News Press Preview, along with all our other paper reviewers, as they take a look at the day's newspapers every evening, 10:30 and 11:30 on Sky News. We'll be back for much more next week. So for now, it's goodbye from them.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye. I'm gonna